Hey there, domainers, and welcome to our 2020 Game of the Year award video. This was obviously an unusual year for the gaming industry, as for the entire world. During a year of change and turmoil, many found comfort in hobbies such as gaming, and many AAA and indie development teams brought us some phenomenal experiences. While there were certainly many great titles released this year, we'll be focusing on those which stand above the rest in their respective categories. We'll include the same categories from last year's video, as well as some new additions. Without further ado, let's take a look at our first award category. Best Sports/Racing Game. The nominees for Best Sports/Racing Games are Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, NBA 2K21, Dirt 5, and FIFA 21. The runner-up for our Sports Racing Game category is FIFA 21. This game is the latest in the now decades-old FIFA series. It benefits from the series' experience, building upon the tried and true formula of the older games, while introducing a wealth of accessibility options to make the game feasible and fun to play for a wider audience. The winner for our Sports Racing Game award is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, a remastered bundle of the first two Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games. It's an excellent modernization of two classics. The elements that made these games nostalgic favorites for so many players remain, while the graphics, levels, and other elements have been significantly upgraded. It strikes a nice balance of preserving the feel of the original while making it look and play like a new game. Best Ongoing Game. The nominees for Best Ongoing Game are Apex Legends, Among Us, Fortnite, Destiny 2, and No Man's Sky. The runner-up spot goes to Among Us. 2018's Among Us has become one of the most popular games of 2020. It's received massive attention, particularly since the pandemic, and has been a great way for friends to stay connected given its online multiplayer and cross-platform support. Given its rise in popularity over the last year, it earns the runner-up spot for Best Ongoing Game. The award for this category goes to No Man's Sky, the massive space exploration game originally released in 2019. It received mixed reception at launch, but the developers have continuously added content to the base game, tweaked the procedural generation of the planets, and fixed issues which led to a bit of a rocky start. Because of the developers' commitment to improving the player's experience since the game's launch, No Man's Sky earns our Best Ongoing Game award for 2020. Best Nintendo Game. The nominees for Best Nintendo Game of 2020 are Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, Paper Mario: The Origami King, Mario Kart Live: Home Circuit, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Nintendo had an odd year full of ports and rumors. One game that was not rumored prior to reveal was Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, the runner-up for the Best Nintendo Game of 2020. This game was a pleasant surprise for fans of both the Zelda series and the Warriors games, and it does a great job of making the classic Warriors-style combat system work within the world of Breath of the Wild. The Best Nintendo Game of 2020, however, absolutely has to go to Animal Crossing: New Horizons. New Horizons released during quarantine, giving everybody a fun, engaging way to interact with friends again. Even without the context of the game launching at the perfect time, Animal Crossing: New Horizons is still an absolute masterpiece. This game feels like the cream of the crop when it comes to Animal Crossing games, introducing new revolutionary ideas such as crafting and Nook Miles, and featuring the greatest customization options of the series. Best Mobile Game. Our nominees are Among Us, Call of Duty Mobile, Genshin Impact, and Pokemon Cafe Mix. The runner-up for Best Mobile Game is Genshin Impact, for the huge, fantastical world it offers on a mobile device. The gameplay works well on mobile platforms and it features impressive world design. The mobile game that really took the world by storm this year was Among Us, our winner for Best Mobile Game of 2020. This game is played for free on phones everywhere. I've personally seen people playing it all over my school. The combination of a $0 price and addictive gameplay makes Among Us an outstandingly phenomenal mobile game. Best Family Game. The nominees are Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, Paper Mario: The Origami King, Mario Kart Live: Home Circuit, Animal Crossing: New Horizons, and Minecraft Dungeons. Our runner-up for Best Family Game of 2020 is Paper Mario: The Origami King, for its gorgeous, playful art style. While it follows a formula which has left the Paper Mario fan base divided, judging Origami King on its own merits reveals a game with beautiful visuals, excellent music and audio design, greater options for exploration than the series has ever seen, and a gameplay loop which is usually quite satisfying. The award for Best Family Game of 2020 goes to Animal Crossing: New Horizons. With so many customization options available, it encourages the player to play with friends and family and give feedback on your island, as well as visit other people's islands for inspiration. This social aspect of New Horizons, on top of the stunning, family-friendly art style, makes Animal Crossing New Horizons the best family game of 2020. Best Action Game. The nominees for Best Action Game are Half-Life Alyx, Doom Eternal, Hades, Nioh 2, and Streets of Rage 4. Our choice for runner-up for the Best Action Game of 2020 is Hades, for the intense tone that helps drive stellar action. The combat system is intuitive, yet allows room for an incredible level of build customization and strategy. The visuals and soundtrack serve the gameplay incredibly well, earning Hades our runner-up spot for this category. The Best Action Game of 2020 is Doom Eternal, for intense, action-packed gameplay that never gets old. There really isn't all that much to be said about this game. Doom is Doom, and Doom has amazing gameplay. Above all the other Doom games, Doom Eternal makes you feel almost like a god, rampaging through giant monsters with guts, guns, and gore spewing out everywhere. The perfectly executed action that is so exaggerated and so Doom makes Doom Eternal our pick for Best Action Game of 2020. Best RPG. Our Best RPG nominees are Persona 5 Royal, Genshin Impact, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Wasteland 3. Genshin Impact truly is a stellar RPG game, especially for mobile, making it the second best RPG of 2020 in our opinion. On top of great world design visually, Genshin Impact explores social and political issues between the societies present in the game, making the world all the more immersive. As for the best RPG game of 2020, that award goes to the Final Fantasy VII Remake. The extremely positive reaction to Sephiroth in Smash goes to show just how much of a legacy Final Fantasy VII has. This particular entry in the series has such a large, passionate following, and for good reason. The Final Fantasy VII Remake has extraordinary combat, gorgeous visuals, incredibly well-developed and unique characters, a phenomenal soundtrack, and a solid story, earning it the award for the Best RPG of 2020. Best Action Adventure Game. Our nominees are Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This was a particularly difficult category to decide on this year, as there were several action-adventure games which deserved close consideration. We chose The Last of Us Part 2 as our runner-up for this category, as it offers a great balance of smooth combat, effective puzzle design, cinematic action sequences, and cutscenes that convey the intensity of both the action and the narrative. In our opinion, it was barely outclassed for this category by Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales. The sequel to the critically acclaimed PS4 title, Miles Morales builds upon the combat system in a slew of interesting ways. It offers perhaps an even greater cinematic quality to the action sequences, due to both the flow of the gameplay and the remarkable graphical capacity of the PS5. The world design is impressive, with the combat, puzzling, and traversal all fitting in smoothly. This is a sequel which builds upon an already effective formula, and it earns our Best Action Adventure Game Award for 2020. Best Audio Design. The nominees for Best Audio Design are Half-Life Alyx, Doom Eternal, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, and Resident Evil 3. Another tough category to decide on. We picked Ori and the Will of the Wisps as our runner-up, though there were several games which came close to taking its place. This is a game which benefits from subtlety and restraint in its music and audio design. The character's movement is light and floaty, and the noises made when the character interacts with the environment reflect this. The audio design perfectly matches the visual style, and the restraint shown throughout most of the game makes the most intense sequences all the more impactful. It was eclipsed by just one title. The winner for Best Audio Design is The Last of Us Part 2. This game does immersion incredibly well, and its audio design is a major component behind this. Moving throughout the world sounds remarkably realistic. The subtlety in the character's breathing helps build tension and make action sequences hit harder. The voice acting is superb, and the explosive nature of some of the more intense moments of combat is conveyed primarily through the game's stellar sound design. Plus the remarkable alternative game mode, which allows players to experience the game without sight benefits from the fantastic audio design, which ultimately makes this game mode possible. Best Multiplayer Game. The nominees for Best Multiplayer Game are Animal Crossing New Horizons, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, Call of Duty Warzone, Among Us, and Valorant. Our runner-up for Best Multiplayer Game of 2020 is a game that took the world by storm for about 2 weeks. Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout offers incredibly fun and hectic multiplayer gameplay, coupled with charming visuals that emphasize the playful nature of the game. Fall Guys is a fantastically chaotic multiplayer game that is just held back by its relatively short staying power. Our winner for Best Multiplayer Game is one which demonstrated a great deal of endurance, and that is Among Us. This game has been popular for months, with addicting gameplay that tests your lying and interrogation skills, while remaining fresh due to unique scenarios which arise during online multiplayer. The emergency meetings and need for cooperation in the game help incorporate a social aspect that makes Among Us the best multiplayer game of 2020. Best Soundtrack. The nominees for Best Soundtrack are Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Paper Mario: The Origami King, and The Last of Us Part 2. This category was hotly contested this year. So many of 2020's most noteworthy games feature amazing soundtracks, though there were two that stood out to us among the rest. Our runner-up is the soundtrack for Ori and the Will of the Wisps, composed by Gareth Coker. Featuring luscious, soothing orchestral music with the occasionally quick, high-energy tracks during action sequences, Ori and the Will of the Wisps soundtrack shows restraint when needed and hits hard when appropriate. It's a phenomenal set of compositions that fit the game's visual style and pacing impeccably. The winner for Best Soundtrack is Hades, another indie gem from 2020. Composed by Darren Korb of Supergiant Games, the Hades soundtrack features a slew of Greek-inspired pieces, which share a consistent theme, but do an effective job of differentiating each area. It's dynamic, with each track fitting the context well. The instrumentation is incredibly impressive, and some of the songs are sure to stick in your head after a few runs. Best Narrative. This year's nominees for Best Narrative are Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, 13 Sentinella, Aegis Rim, The Last of Us Part 2, and Final Fantasy VII Remake. This year's runner-up is The Last of Us Part 2. The sequel to the 2013 original, The Last of Us Part 2 picks up 5 years after the end of the events of the first game. It's an incredibly story-rich game with phenomenal character progression and voice acting. The post-apocalyptic world introduced in the original is expanded here, making the game feel all the more cohesive. Now for our winner of Best Narrative Game, Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is a game that completely immerses you in its world with beautiful visuals and fantastic atmosphere, which helps sell a strong narrative, making it our pick for the game with the best narrative of 2020. It cannot be said enough how integrated the Japanese style of this game is incorporated into everything, from the music and visuals to the gameplay. For example, the stealth and combat elements of the game help sell the samurai theming that corresponds with Japanese culture. This drives a strong emotional narrative that is an experience unlike any other. How strongly the atmosphere intertwined with the narrative makes Ghost of Tsushima win the award for Best Narrative. Innovation and Accessibility. The nominees for this category of ever-growing importance are Assassin's Creed Valhalla, The Last of Us Part 2, Hyperdot, Grounded, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Watch Dogs Legion. This year was marked by some huge strides towards greater accessibility in video games. The issue of accessibility is one which has gained far more attention over the last few years, which has led to some great improvements on the parts of both big-budget and indie development teams, which have helped make video games enjoyable by a greater number of people, despite disabilities and limitations faced by many players. Both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X have accessibility options built into the consoles and controllers' fundamental designs. There were many games which made great progress in the direction of accessibility, but here are our top picks. The runner-up for innovation and accessibility is Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales. This game offered most of the accessibility options which have become industry standards, and stood out due to a few extra features. For example, to allow players who may have difficulty pressing multiple buttons at once or orchestrating complicated input patterns, there are shortcut options which can be used via the left and right D-pad buttons. However, there was one game which offered the most impressive array of accessibility features. The winner for innovation and accessibility is The Last of Us Part 2. There are over 60 accessibility options, ranging from more basic options like motion sickness settings, aim assist and lock-on aiming, high contrast displays, and other visual aids, to the previously discussed game mode which allows players to experience the game without sight. The excellent audio design discussed previously allows this game mode to exist successfully, as unique audio cues and a verbal menu which will read the player their stats, equipped weapons, and other key information allow players with partial or even full blindness to enjoy the game. The Last of Us Part 2 is easily the most accessible game featured on this list, and certainly deserves our New Innovation and Accessibility Award. Best Indie Game. The nominees for Best Indie Game of 2020 are Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, Carry On, Spelunky 2, Hades, and Spiritfarer. This year we saw the release of several indie gems, making this another tough category to decide on. We chose Supergiant's Hades as our runner-up for Best Indie Game. As the winner of our Best Action Game and Best Soundtrack categories, it's no surprise that Hades was close to winning the Best Indie Game. It has a satisfying gameplay loop with great combat, character progression, witty dialogue, phenomenal music, memorable boss encounters, and a visual style that suits the game well. However, there was one indie game which we placed just above it. Our 2020 Best Indie Game goes to Spelunky 2. Created by Derek Yu and his team at Mossmouth, Spelunky 2 was the highly anticipated sequel to the critically acclaimed cult hit Spelunky HD, a total remake of the original 2008 roguelike platformer Spelunky. Spelunky HD is when the series really found its style in its visuals, music and audio design, and movement mechanics. It set a gold standard for 2D platforming controls, which work incredibly smoothly, offsetting the game's difficulty. Spelunky 2 is a true sequel to the indie classic. It follows a similar but more smoothed-out visual design, has incredibly similar movement physics, adds a wealth of new content in the form of items, enemies, and NPCs and areas, and turns the difficulty up even greater. It's an incredibly punishing game, despite its cartoonish visuals. In addition to being a 2D platformer, Spelunky 2 is a roguelike, meaning it features permadeath. Each time you die, you lose all the items, health boosts, and progress you made, and are forced to start all the way at the beginning of the game. However, with every death, the player learns valuable knowledge about the game's myriad of enemies and traps, creating an immensely satisfying gameplay loop. It's a phenomenally polished and well-designed title, which serves as a fantastic sequel to Spelunky HD. Game of the Year. Finally, we've arrived at our highest award. Determining what deserves Game of the Year is always daunting, and this year is no exception. Between the wealth of quality AAA titles and the sizable list of fantastic indie games, 2020 offered a myriad of potential candidates for this award. That being said, let's get into our picks. The nominees for Game of the Year are Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal, Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and Hades. The runner-up for Game of the Year is Animal Crossing New Horizons. The latest game in the Animal Crossing franchise offers a satisfying gameplay loop enjoyable for all ages, builds upon the formula established by earlier titles in the series, and adds a myriad of new elements and content which help it stand out. Features endlessly charming visuals, sound effects, music, and dialogue, and allows for greater customization than any previous Animal Crossing game. While these are all important factors, the main reason why it's been chosen as our runner-up for Game of the Year is due to the critical context in which it was released, and the positive effect the game release had. During a global pandemic which has left much of the world feeling lonely and disconnected, Animal Crossing New Horizons offered players a way to immerse themselves in a peaceful environment, which could be shared with their friends and loved ones. It came shortly after lockdowns and social distancing guidelines had become the global norm, when many people were suddenly cut off from their closest to them. While most games on this list released in a similar context, and while many offer multiplayer gameplay, we feel that Animal Crossing New Horizons is the clearest example of positive escapism from the video game industry this year. Its bright, colorful, inviting atmosphere, coupled with the laid-back island music and underscored by the wholesome friendliness of the villagers, creates the foundation for a world which provided comfort to a great many players. On top of this, the ability to visit other people's islands through online multiplayer elevated the game even further, as it provided a way for friends and loved ones to stay connected and experience the escape into an island paradise together. Now it's time for our highest award of the year. The winner of the Game Domain Game of the Year award goes to Ghost of Tsushima. This open-world action-adventure game from Sucker Punch Productions is simply polished, from its stunning visuals to its thrilling combat system to its beautiful. The world design is stellar, and traversing across the map on foot or on horseback is endlessly satisfying. The combat system borrows concepts from the Assassin's Creed and Batman Arkham series, but has more than enough features to make it feel unique and stay engaging. As you progress through the game, you learn new sword fighting stances, which each come with their own movesets, meaning you can adapt your fighting style in real time to best attack and defend against your enemies. This creates an immensely satisfying sense of progression, since you are constantly expanding your options and strategies in combat. The music adjusts to what's happening in the game, making the open and dynamic experience feel even more cinematic. The game features a fantastic story, with the protagonist effectively communicating the weight of the threat he faces, and the villain being one of the most compelling video game antagonists we've seen in a long time. There are 2 series of side quests which are consistently engaging, often requiring you to complete tasks which differ from the typical gameplay loop of the main game, and providing character progression for the main characters. The Mythic Tales side quests delve into the world's lore, requiring the player to track down legendary techniques or equipment which all have legends that accompany them. The charms you collect throughout the game offer the chance for players to customize their playstyle by granting the protagonist certain buffs, which when combined with the various stances at your disposal means that your fighting style can be highly personalized. The game offers a huge open world to explore, but it doesn't overshoot. It's a fairly dense environment with enemy encounters, side quests, collectibles, and other content spaced out masterfully. Overall, Ghost of Tsushima is an incredibly polished game, which Sucker Punch Productions clearly put a lot of heart into, and it stands out in the open-world action-adventure game, as well as among the many fantastic games of 2020. And that concludes our 2020 Game of the Year Awards video. We hope you've all enjoyed our content this past year. It's been a pleasure as always to share so much time with our viewers and members of our Discord server. More than ever, we feel incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of a thriving online community, and we sincerely look forward to what lies ahead for us in 2021 and beyond. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and joining the official Game Domain Discord server. It's a great way to engage with fellow video game enthusiasts and stay up to date on all of our content. We hope you've all had a safe and happy holiday season, and we look forward to spending the next year with you all.